The topic today is give the buffoon credit. It will become obvious who the buffoon is. And what started me off on this podcast is an Australian wrote a blog on the buffoon. And the Australian's complaint is that America has elected a dangerously unstable president whose reckless rhetoric and actions threaten the safety and stability of the entire world, not just the United States. The Australian speaker says the president behaves like a megalomaniac. Someone say that for me. Making wild threats about kidnapping leaders, invading or bombing countries, stealing territories, and annexing nations after global politics were a game. This behavior is framed as abnormal, not strategic or strong, not as but as a walking, talking international crisis that forces other countries to live with the consequences without having any say. Okay. Now, I'm not in favor of what this buffoon is doing, nor did I vote for him. The Australian points out that that's not an excuse that we didn't vote for him. What I think the Australian and also this lady, Lisa Granger, a Canadian, failed to understand is that Americans aren't actually the ones in control. It's the rich elite. And stay with me a second. First, as background reading, J.D. Vance um, Hillbilly Elegy is required reading if you want to understand America. It's not the greatest book in the world, but I actually identified with it. My liberal friends, and I'm more liberal than I am conservative, but I'm mostly an American. My liberal friends don't get it. I worked in the American metals field as an extractive metallurgist for 60 years. Yep, I'm just a shade younger than Trump. So perhaps you'll find me as deranged as him. Now, what happened to America between the late 70s until now is that we shipped out most of our industry, the metals industry, the minerals industry, to China. Now, it's not that America can't compete with China. Americans are as good at workers and as smart. In fact, they're more clever, I think, than the rest of the world put together. But you can't compete against China, who's not following the same environmental laws, labor laws, or even understands the business models um, that the rest of the world works on. This is gonna sound like a short diversion, and it is. But if you look at solar panels, just for an example of what I'm talking about, China decided they wanted to be the number one producer of solar panels, and they encouraged their companies to make solar panels. I think there's now about seven major solar panel producers in China. They are making more solar panels than the market can absorb. Their workers in these plants are working 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, working themselves to the bone to make more solar panels. None of the seven companies are making money. They can't pay their workers well. They're flooding the world with solar panels, more solar panels than we can buy. What would happen in America? Five or six of those companies would shut down. Instead, all those companies keep running in China, making solar panels, driving the price down, which is good for the rest of us in one way. Unless you want to be a solar panel manufacturer in the US, you have to compete with seven companies that have driven the price so low that they can't make money. They can't pay their workers well. And they snuff out any other local manufacturer of solar panels around the world. And they do this in an environmentally irresponsible way. Look at the rivers in northern China. Look at the groundwater that's polluted. Now, meanwhile, in the U.S., the rich elite hardly even notice that American workers have lost good paying jobs and no longer can buy a house, a car, pay for the groceries, or even afford to have children. The rich elite are doing fine in this country. They've passed laws that move income from the middle class and even the poor class up to the top. The Democratic Party is working hard on stuff like race inequality, trans rights, just gay rights, all those things, and I'm for all of those. I don't. I'm as liberals as you can get from a society, from a love my neighbor point of view. I'm tolerant of almost anyone that doesn't do violence. But J.D. Vance noticed, and he's a conservative, and wrote Hillbilly Elegy. Did the Democrats understand it? No. The social groups I'm in, I've raised attention to that book. It's probably been 10 years ago, a long time ago. And said, if you don't read this and understand it, you're going to be shocked at what happens. What happened Was the buffoon noticed? The Democrats? Nope. Even most of the Republicans didn't notice, carried on business as usual. Meanwhile, millions of Americans were going from where they couldn't buy a house or a car, couldn't buy groceries. They noticed. My dad was an automobile mechanic in the 50s and 60s. He bought a house. His wife didn't work. He bought a car. One of his kids went to college. Me. Well, both went. One did well, one didn't. We were poor. Um, I have stories about teachers sending me home because I had holes in my shoes. Do those stories on another day. But we always had food on the table, and we could have hamburger meat and beans. We could even have our friends over to eat with us. Life wasn't perfect, but at that time, I suspect we were in the bottom 25% of Americans. And life was better then for us than most middle class Americans now. The older middle class in America is still doing okay because we've transferred money from not only the poor to the rich, but we've transferred money from the young to the old. So now the young are not seeing a better America. They're seeing an America that's much tougher. Is it because America isn't making a lot of money? Nope. We still make more money than the rest of the world. We're still rich as hell, except it's not going to Americans. It's going to the rich elite. Of course, I'm just describing wealth inequality. So, how did the buffoon get in power? He noticed that the middle class is no longer the middle class. Now, his techniques are really very effective, but crappy. He blames the Democrats for this, and they share you know, their responsibility. And he blames the immigrants for taking our jobs. Well, that's not where most of the jobs have gone. And getting rid of the immigrants will actually make us poor. But Trump, oops, I'm not supposed to say his name. I was trying to keep you all guessing who the buffoon is. The buffoon noticed the problem. The rich elite keep pushing the Democrats against the Republicans and the Republicans against the Democrats, blaming the other side. Pardon me, I've got a cold. And meanwhile, nothing is happening. Now, what we're ended up doing is, our debt, United States, is getting out of control, and the Fed is printing money, to cover the shortfall of what other countries will not invest in us. And Trump's antics and tariffs are accelerating that process. But that process started a long time ago. We started transferring money from the poor to the rich and from the young to the old. Nobody's fixing it. There's still a lot of anger there, and Trump is capitalizing on it. And Trump um, may be making things so bad they either collapse, which is what a lot of us fear, or he makes them so bad that maybe we can identify the problem and start over. Now, meanwhile, in the U.S., we have NIMBYs that don't want plants built in America because of the environmental problems. They haven't noticed that the green agenda requires more copper, lithium, manganese, cobalt, zinc, blah, 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 blah. Mines requires more mines. They haven't noticed that. And in any case, they want to export the responsibility for the environmental and the labor laws that are broke. They want to export it to China. Let China pollute their country. Meanwhile, the Democrats have made a system, see California, where to get a permit, it can take up to 20 years. The military's weighing in here, and they've noticed that they can't make their military systems that keep us powerful without uh, raw materials, rare earths, antimony, gallium, germanium, etc., from China, because China now has all the plants that make the raw materials that make U.S. weapons. Now, the military might be able to get the attention of the rich elites, and they're doing a lot of superficial stuff and not really addressing the problems. Because the Democrats and the Republicans that are in power, guess what? They were put there by the rich elites, and they think like the rich elites who haven't noticed that we've got a problem. We used to have something called the Bureau of Mines when I was growing up that helped all metallurgical facilities uh, with questions of science and even of practice, and helped, was at the center of educating our mining companies. The state of Arizona made more copper than the rest of the world put together when I graduated. That's mind boggling. Now we make 60% of the copper we need. We're like number 5 or 6 on the list, which is amazing considering the ore grades that we have and the lack of support and the NIMBYs shipping our plants off to China. The NIMBYs shipping our plants off, the Democrats making laws that make it impossible to get a permit, and the Republicans moving all the tax dollars uh, from the poor and middle class up to the rich and making the stock market and people that make money by the stock market wealthier every day. So, Australians, Canadians that are complaining about our buffoon is the only one that noticed what's going on in America and the only one that responded to it. I'll admit his response is crap, but he at least saw the problem. The Democrats, the Republicans, the NIMBYs, the educated elite in this country, Wall Street, Main Street, not a single one of all those brilliant people saw the problem and did anything about it. So the buffoon comes along and identifies the problem, taps into the pain, offers a solution himself. Now, it turns out that he's a con man and he knows how to set up a cult and get people to buy into this cult. And he's brainwashed, 49% of the American public. Maybe that's dropped down to 40%. Pardon me. So this buffoon that's kind of tearing up the world right now, and old alliances and stuff, um, has noticed the problem, what's happening to Americans. Americans are not in control anymore. The rich elite are. Average Americans do not know how to get back in control. Average Americans are not as stupid as you think, even the MAGA side. They are feeling the pain of the rich elite taking over our country, systematically putting laws in place that move power and money from the average American to the rich elite. That's just the way it is in America. Now, you can complain about Americans keeping the buffoon in power, and we will take the buffoon out, probably even before the next election, because the average American will rise up against this nonsense, against ICE and Trump's policies. But the trouble is, as soon as we get rid of the buffoon, the people that started this problem, the rich elite, will step back into power and put new people in place that do not address the problem of wealth inequality, the problem of Americans not being able to buy a house, a car, groceries, education, or even afford to have children. The Democrats, who you would hope would address those issues, will not. They will come up with mild incremental changes like voting for the subsidies, on health care, which is fine, doesn't fix the core problem. We have a food system that ends up with half of our people becoming diabetics by the time they're 50, 60 years old. Their diet, sugar, processed foods, crap. You would think someone would be taking care of that. Nope, the rich elites have figured out that they can make processed food and make more money. It's true. Pharmacy, they have a perfect model for making money. Wait till someone gets sick and then give them a pill. Don't worry about them being healthy. We don't care if we're killing people. If we can sell them a pill, makes us money, moves money from the bottom the middle to the top, we're all for it. That's what our medical system does. That's the country we live in. Americans are trapped. They're trapped by the rich elite on both sides who blame the other side, and we spend all our energy fighting the other side. This is an old, ancient Texan. America, you can wake up and figure out what's going on, or you can just keep playing the same game. And the rest of the world, if you can figure out a way to help us get out of control of the rich elite, that's what you should trying to be helping with. Getting rid of Trump is a temporary bump in the road.